So using OBS or just using a raw webcam capture?
Well, that's a nice thing. This Jitsi that we're using directly connects to YouTube. I don't need OBS or anything else.
Okay. Well, in the OBS, I have all those like weird Rebels running around doing my thing. Yeah. So that's what, from what I'm trying to do, that works. But yeah, for this kind of thing, then it's not. Unless I'm trying to be dramatic, having weird funky backdrops or something else like that, it's a little different.
This is true. So welcome back, everyone, to the last panel of Saturday, which is not a formal panel. It's more just whoever wants to come hang out can hang out. I've extended invites to everyone on the guest list for today and tomorrow, and I even extended an invite or two to some people that may not be directly involved for one reason or another. I'm also having a celebratory drink, which is something I very rarely do. And in honor of the situation, what else would I be drinking but Corona?
And it's extra Corona.
Yes. My fiance Amisha was good, who Arthur, of course, knows, was good enough to pick me up a can.
Because she feels she needs extra Corona. That's exactly what you need.
Apparently.
It's a mixed message there, in my opinion, but there you go.
No, I'm good. I happen to like Corona beer, and I'm generally amused, since this is, after all, the subtitle for the convention is the Corona Apocalypse. So it's fitting. We have all, and hey, we should all celebrate. I mean, it's been a month and we're all still here.
Longer than that.
This is true.
It was like March. Literally, I was supposed to go to California for like the third week of March, and they shut everything down like March 15th, 16th.
So yeah, it's good point. It's actually going on the second month.
It's going on the third month, man. Think about
it. Well, it's at the end of the second month, yes.
End of the second month, yeah.
I've been listening to lectures all day. My brain's slightly fried.
I know how it is. Like I said, I run my convention. I know how it goes.
Indeed. I have to say, hopefully the folks that have listened in agree with me. On the whole, I think today's been a success. I've had a lot of fun listening to the different folks.
Well, that's good. That's what usually comes down to. Usually when I'm running a convention, I'm so fried dealing with the hotel and all the rest of that stuff that I have lectures recorded so that I can actually look at them afterwards. And that's when I enjoy the convention, is when I can actually be an observer rather than a organizational participant.
And God willing, if we go real world with this next year, which is a hope, I'll have that experience.
It's an experience. It's very expensive, but yeah. I mean, Crucible got switched out to Omnicon 2 years ago. We were going to do Omnicon again this year, and then everything went crazy.
Yeah.
Now, usually it's in October. I'm not really convinced everything will be okay by then, but we'll see what happens.
I would like to see things okay enough to have Omnicon by October, particularly because we need something positive going on in October because of the other group that's doing a big meeting on Halloween, no less.
Well, I mean, it's not meant. It's like beginning of October. It's not meant to try to mess in with the whole like Halloween thing.
Well, no. Oh, no. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to. So there's a group last year that decided to have a conference called Make America Straight Again.
Oh God!
In Florida, in Orlando, Florida, to celebrate the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. They've decided to have another Make America Straight Again concert on Halloween. Ergo, we need something, other positive things going on in October, as opposed to this.
Did you know there's a meme running around, it's illegal to do the Nazi salute in Germany, and they literally will arrest you on the spot if you do it, saying you're promoting a illegal organization? Why don't we have something like that here? I mean, come on. I mean, if you have an obvious hate group that you're celebrating a hate crime, how is that not something that you shouldn't get detained for?
And I'll go you a step for if they were just as repugnant, disgusting, and immoral as I find the Sieg Heil, these guys go a step worse than just celebrating a mass shooting. They're openly calling for the government to round up and mass execute out people in the LGBT community.
And that's my point and problem. I mean,
and they should be in serious legal trouble. I agree with you.
Well, I mean, if you're inciting violence, that's against the law, and that's what that is, plain and simple.
True, and they're careful publicly at least. Although I've heard rumors that I definitely believe that privately they're not so careful. But publicly, at least, it's always no. We don't want to do this. We want the government to step in and treat being LGBT as a crime and treat it the way you would a murderer or a thief, which is incredibly stupid and indefensible. But it gives them a buffer in terms of, well, no. I'm not calling for people to be violent. We don't want people to violate the law. We want the law to change to suit our beliefs.
Yeah, it's just.
And I'm not defending them. I think they line. I'm very, you know me, Arthur. A lot of my listeners know me. I am very, very pro free speech, even speech I find disgusting. But calling for mass executions is over the line, in my opinion. Even if you try to buffer it by saying, "Oh, I want the government to do it."
There's free speech, and then there's I can walk into a crowded theater and yell fire. I mean, technically, there's free speech in part of that, but it's still epically dangerous, and that's why it's illegal. Instigating violence against other human beings that are not hurting anybody else is a very bad idea. That should be illegal.
I agree.
We're not even talking about even hurting. We're talking about like they want them killed. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You're trying to make something a capital offense. We don't have a lot of states with capital punishment in this country, and certainly it's usually on the level of like murder and rape and things of that nature, which are even heinous by their standards, I would hope.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like that's just why would you equivalent that on that scale? We're saying, oh, well, because they're not my political spectrum, they deserve death. I mean, that's just.
It's worse than that because they don't just want train of thought, but it's like no. I mean, usually with murder, if you kill one guy, you're not going to be put to death. You're going to go spend the time in prison, possibly the rest of your life. You need to be a serial killer or a cop killer. They don't just put somebody who shot one guy one time on death row, and they're saying no. If you've had sex with your own gender, death row for you. Which, what people, as I've said it on this channel many times, and I absolutely stand by it. As long as it's between consenting adults, it's none of my business. People should be allowed to do have sex with your own gender if you want, as long as the people involved are consent properly. The old BDSM saying, safe, sane, consensual. That to me should be that to me is technically at the moment the legal standard. Is everybody involved willing? Yes? Okay, then government can keep its nose out of it. And let's face it, there are much more serious issues along those lines that the government should be concerned with.
I hope they're on like the FBI watch list as a hate group that they're paying attention to.
I'm pretty sure they are. I know that there are definitely Southern Poverty Law Center lists them as a hate group, as do most other groups. I'm not positive, but I'm reasonably certain that the FBI probably has an eye on them. Say what you will, but the FBI is not completely stupid.
They're not. I mean, the whole idea of the FBI is supposed to be smarter than the average cop. And while individuals can screw up because people are human, as an organization, it's generally been very, very effective. I think the problem is the current political winds keep casting in whatever light that suits them at the time. Sometimes they are the most wonderful thing in the world, and other times they are the most evil thing in the world. It's sort of like, pick one. It's not a matter of, you can't just change it because the political wind changes and therefore now they're hated now or now they're great again. It's like, give me a break. I'm not saying cops don't screw up. I'm not saying the legal system doesn't have its holes and flaws and stuff like that. But it's what we have, and it's one of the better things that are out there on the planet. As long as you have, integrity with the people and they have oversight, which they do, you have laws which govern them, then it should be okay. I mean, good example. The whole craziness right now with, I think it's Richard Burr getting brought up on charges or potential charges for insider trading because he was on the COVID, Intel meetings, and so he dumped all the stocks so that when he knew the inevitable stock market crash was coming, he wouldn't get hit by it. And he wasn't the only one. There were other ones that other senators got nailed for too on both sides. And they should be brought up charges. That's what that law's there for.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, and so that's why they're getting arraigned, and that's
it's as it should be.
It is as it should be, and that is what the FBI is there for, and that they are there doing their job. It's when law enforcement becomes political, that's an extremely dangerous thing. And you're talking about authoritarianism. You should not target any groups simply because they're the opposite
political party. Absolutely true.
They're opposite of the political party. Like, some people were saying, well, the IRS was going after conservative groups during the Obama administration, and now the whatever is doing what. It should be bipartisan. It should be a matter: are you breaking the law or not? Yes or no. You know what I mean? It's not a matter of, well, you're out of favor now because you're disagreeing with the president. No, that's not how that works. That's not how it should work. The whole point of free speech is agreeing or disagreeing with politicians at will. That's the point. That's literally what your free speech is when you're talking about voting. That's your free speech of I am agreeing with this politician or not. That's what a vote is. Which means you're going to talk about it beforehand. And it shouldn't be something that, because you disagree with certain political views one or the other, that you should be shut down or hunted or, otherwise harassed. And
I've seen some of that, unfortunately, with some of my friends, and it's like, I don't agree with them politically. You know what? I'm still going to be unless they start deviating into actual racism, homophobia, and things like that. I'm not going to unfriend somebody just because I don't agree with their all of their political views.
Well, I think political views should be something that you sit down and you discuss. It's like, okay, we disagree. The question is, why do we disagree? Is it because of tribalism or because we're fed information from a particular news source which is not quite reputable? People might say that about MSNBC. They might say that about Fox News and whatever. It's like, okay, well, fine. Well, let's dig up the facts. Let's look at the facts and then move forward. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And the problem is the facts are getting separated at this point. It's very unfortunate. And that's, it used to be you could have a discussion with somebody without getting, heated. You go, well, I can agree to disagree. You can be adult about it.
Yeah.
And now people on the internet, they scream bloody murder. And then they push things that are so blatantly impossible, but because their own side pushes it, they go, well, see what I'm pushing? And they call them on and say, oh, I was just kidding.
Oh, God, that's a joke excuse.
That's such a bully excuse. It's sort of like, oh, I'll be a complete asshole, and someone actually, doesn't react the way I want them to. It's like, oh, I was just kidding. Or I didn't mean it, or whatever. It's like, no, you meant it. That's just the most stupid thing in the world. That's the same thing with the whataboutisms. Sort of like, well, 5 people robbed the bank, therefore I'm allowed to rob a bank. No, it's
that logic.
Yeah. Well, such and such did these horrible things. Well, what about this person? What about that person? Doesn't make it not illegal still. It's not how that works.
I don't listen to that logic all the time. Like a group I enjoy getting into debates with on the internet because I like picking fights with crazy people, with crazy/stupid people.
I have with my time.
Young Earth creationism.
Oh God!
And how often they will go to me, well, science does this or science doesn't do this. It's like, okay, that's great. What about you? What about what you do? What about why should I do? Not why is science wrong? Why are you right? And funny enough, they can almost never answer that simple question.
Yep. That's your
outside of the Bibles or and not to pick on just Christians, because there are Hindus that are creationists and there are Muslims that are creationists. It's just mostly Christians. But my holy book says I'm right, so I must be right. Which gets even funnier when you start putting out all the other things it says they don't agree with.
Well, that's the problem that I always have with that kind of thing. People have a tendency of picking and choosing what they want to do. So it really just comes down to they're just looking for excuses for their own insanity.
I agree.
You know, it's sort of like the whole flat earther thing. I have a drone. I think it's pretty cool. I have it sent up like 400 feet. You can start seeing the curvature of the earth.
That is very cool, in my opinion.
You know, so it's not that hard to prove. I mean, climb a mountain. That's a lot higher than my drone will go. I'm sure you can see at the top of the mountain, but they don't want to hear anything that disagrees with our assumed views. But
there's an even funnier example. Your points are excellent. There's an even funnier example.
How many of them? Sure.
There's an expensive gyroscope you can get that will actually show the rotation of the Earth. It'll move the 15 degrees per hour over the course of 24 hours and complete the 360 degree, whatever it is. It'll do the full 360 degree circle at 15 degree increments. A flat earther bought this to disprove that the idea that the Earth was spinning. Because if you're, I'll set this up, even the globe earthers believe that this would prove them right. And when it doesn't happen, they'll have to admit I'm right. He then had egg on his face as he tried to explain why, when he did the experiment himself, in fact, that the thinking part of the world that believes the Earth is round and rotating was correct. Because lo and behold, it'll behave exactly the way you expect it to. But he put up a video, and as far as I know, I think it's still on YouTube, showing himself getting results that clearly show he's wrong.
Right. Well, did you see that video about the concept of I forget what type of motion it's called, but where it's a matter of the toilets in the southern hemisphere go the opposite direction than the toilets in the northern hemisphere?
The Coriolis effect is what I'm thinking of.
There you go. And so some guy who obviously lives literally on the equator of the Earth simply had a bucket of water and had another bucket with a hole in it. And would move it literally live on video, moves to one side of the equator because he was right on the line, and he saw the swirl going the one way. He moved it 10 feet the other way, and the swirl started going the other way because he redumped the water in. And then he put it right in the middle, and he just went straight through. Showing outright that, that effect. It's sort of like, how do you explain that effect at all if the Earth is flat and not rotating?
The only problem with that experiment, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, and I believe you're correct. I'm sure I can go look it up.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
It shouldn't happen because the Coriolis effect is far too minor, it requires a bigger amount to work than, the classic example of the toilet bowler. That's not actually why toilets spin the way they do. It's the way the toilet bowl is designed. To actually see the Coriolis effect in effect, you have to look at something like a hurricane, because hurricanes will spin one way in the northern hemisphere and the other way in the southern hemisphere.
I don't understand why it worked that way on the video. I mean, he did not look like that would have the equipment to fake it.
Maybe he gave it a spin. I honestly don't know. Okay. But and maybe I'm wrong. But my understanding was that the Coriolis effect requires a bigger system than something that small to work. I could very well be wrong.
Very right. I mean, there was that whole thing back, I don't know, it was the 70s or whatever, where they put like a glass over a piece of paper that was suspended by a pin, and it started to move, and they were saying, well, he's telekinetic. And the reality was the glass wasn't sealing against the flat surface, and so you could breathe underneath it, and that would come up and that would spin it. So there's always, even if the person didn't know he's screwing with it, it may be still something else. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to say that that's a possibility. That's why investigations should happen, not simply take it on face value.
And that's why repetition. You got a one result. Okay, let's have somebody else try it and do it again and see what happens.
That's why you have peer review.
Yep. And it's always interesting, just some of the weird things that turn up. Because of the anomalies. My favorite is, you ever look up the lists of weird, what's the word I'm looking for? weird correlations.
Okay.
For example, if you chart it, and people have, you guys can look this up on Google. If you chart it out, there's a correlation between the granting of PhDs in mathematics and deaths by drowning, strangulation, and other forms of asphyxiation. It doesn't mean anything. It's just if you plot these two particular points of information out.
Of the PhD document comes from? I mean, come on. They have to get on that paper.
Yeah, well, yeah, sacrifice through asphyxiation. That's the solution. That makes sense. And there's just this whole series. You can look them up. It's there. You know, if you look at the statistics, it bears out, and it shouldn't. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones just because there's some really funny ones. That's always my favorite is this death one. There we go. For that matter, number of people who drowned by falling into a pool correlates to films that Nicolas Cage appeared in.
Oh, God.
Per capita cheese consumption correlates with the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. Divorce rate in Maine affects, apparently, again by correlation, affects the per capita consumption of margarine. That's a new one on me and weird. The age of Miss America and murders by steam, hot vapors, and hot objects.
Okay.
Yeah, again, it's like
I think it's one of the situations of someone having far too much time on their hands.
Yes, it is. But it is a really good example of if you just keep taking sets of data and comparing them to each other, you're eventually going to find two things that have nothing to do with each other that have a correlation.
Well, as someone once said, correlation is not causation.
Exactly. But flat earthers, young earthers, and homeopathic remedy people and lots of other people who believe in weird things. Oh, there's a perfect example. There's a perceived rise in cases of autism with the increase of the vaccine schedule. Anti-vaxxers are
diagnosing it back then. That's why there's
yes.
They didn't do diagnosis back then.
Oh well, there's two reasons. One, you're absolutely 100% right. The diagnosis has improved. The diagnosis has increased because we're actually looking for it more. For that matter, we also vastly expanded what we define as autism.
That's also true. Asperger's originally wasn't defined as autism originally.
Exactly.
Now it is.
So now everyone who used to be Asperger's is now included in the autism population. But anti-vaxxers will just look at that correlation and go, see, we're obviously right. And it's like, no, this is why we say that correlation doesn't prove causation.
Right.
This went decidedly more political than I thought it would. Not that I'm saying that's a bad thing. It's fascinating.
I've been trying to keep more apolitical. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out where at least when I do my lectures and things of that nature. I mean, my Facebook is a little different, but.
Well, yeah, Facebook's that's kind of part of the idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big thing that I think people don't quite get is, when you post a political thing on Facebook, it's not to try to change anybody's mind, because you're not going to. It's to reinforce those that think similarly to you that they're not alone. Because as much as, all right, I keep someone in their own bubble, if you will, and as a friend, just so I can see what the other side is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the vast majority of the stuff is absolutely ludicrous, is so easily disprovable. I also know this person is a troll, so I don't even know half the stuff of whether he's even believing this stuff or not. He's just doing it to rah the idiots. And it's a matter of, we need a different political discourse in this country where we can sit down and go, look, we have more in common than we have differences.
Absolutely
You're
true.
listening to the people with the bullhorns, listening to them why you should hate these other people. And if that's not helpful, you'll find out that, people like the Marvel movies, people like eating pizza, people like having a wife or a husband or what else like that. People like their children in some cases, mostly anyway. Um, people complain about their jobs. People complain about the healthcare system one way or the other. Let's have real discussions about it instead of just wars which will get nothing accomplished. There's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be something that sort of like, okay, let's explain your side why you feel that way. Let me explain my side why I feel that way. We're not going to agree. That's fine. Let's see where we can overlap enough that we can agree and then go in that direction. And at least we'll be better off than the constant bickering that gets absolutely nothing done because everything's gridlocked.
Mm-hmm. There's also the reality that even, you have the Democrats and the Republicans, even if you take subjects that traditionally they're supposed to disagree on, there's a rising number of Republicans that support same-sex marriage and LGBT rights.
Right.
There are more than a few Democrats that are seriously concerned about illegal immigration. As I think you'll agree, and I think most of our listeners would agree, issues are rarely black and white. People usually fall somewhere in between the two when you go issue to issue.
And laws are so complicated anyway. There's nothing saying you couldn't put stipulations, so it's not just a blanket thing one way or the other anyway.
Yeah.
And if you can't agree on the larger stuff, agree on the smaller stuff and then implement that. And then worry about the nuance one way or the other based on politics, if you will.
Well, there's also the basic point of just respect people,
yes,
even if you don't respect their ideas.
Pretty much. But then unfortunately, that has to go both sides. Meaning, like the hate group you were talking about in the beginning of the chat, or it's sort of like, well, our beliefs is these people should die. Well, that's a compromise we can't have. You can't
absolutely.
Compromise that we just put them in wheelchairs because we chop their legs off. No, that's not how that works. Political disagreement is whether or not roads should go there or whether or not you spend more on schools and stuff of that nature. Political disagreement,
which is what I mean,
about which people you should exterminate. That's not political disagreement. I mean, that's Nazism.
Yeah, that's human rights. Human rights are, but there's also the reality of, if you don't like LGBT people, no one's saying you have to go to an LGBT wedding. Nobody's saying you have to be friends with them. We're just the argument is give them basic human respect and the basic rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're all supposed to have.
There was a meme that came up which showed a Muslim woman in a head-to-toe black burqa next to a full flaming drag queen right next to her, sitting next to each other on a subway, with the sub-headline saying, this is what the liberals want. And I'm sitting there going, it's like, one, this has already happened. They actually tracked down at least the drag queen. And they go, yeah, they didn't know each other at all. It wasn't a setup or anything else like that. The whole point is, this is the current norm. And they were perfectly happy sitting next to each other. They weren't at each other. They were literally live and let live. That's kind of what America's about. And that's what it should be about. Why are you complaining about that? Why are you saying that, this is what the liberals want? So we're already there. I
don't consider myself a liberal, and that's what I want.
It should be a matter of if you want to walk out there and drag and you got the confidence to do it, go you. If you want to be out there in a burqa and do your thing because that's important to you, go you. It shouldn't be a matter of that either one's illegal. Now, if either one of them has like a bomb underneath it and the drag queen has a bomb in her hairdo or something else like that, then that's a problem because they're hurting other people.
Yes.
Their mere presence is not hurting other people. They both have lives to go on. They have things to go do. It's not affecting you. So what? Deal with it, move on.
There's a good line from an atheist YouTuber I watch from time to time. And I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I agree with him here. He'll comment that my right to swing my arm ends at your nose.
Yes.
And it applies, if you want to go if you're a guy and you want to go dress in drag and put on makeup, put on a wig, it doesn't affect me at all for you to go do that. If you're a Islamic woman and you want to wear a burqa and that's how you want to represent yourself and what you feel comfortable with, doesn't affect me either. It's not my, there's a great concept we used to have in this country, at least when I grew up, although it got horribly misapplied in many cases, but there's a great concept I think we need to bring back, which is called mind your own business.
Yep. Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's kind of obvious by this point I'm leaning left, but I'm not a social justice warrior. I'm not to fix things that don't need to be fixed. It's sort of like, I want rights for you. It's like, well, we don't want those rights. But you should have them. We don't actually care. Shut up. Well, then it's a matter of now you're forcing your views on somebody else. That is complete. It's sort of like what they said before, or when you become obsessed with the enemy, you become the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I also have a problem with, when you're so obsessed about getting or doing something that even that group doesn't want, you become the enemy. You become the very thing that you're fighting against. I am for individual rights. I am for, like as you put it, like live and let live kind of situation. As long as it's not affecting me or anybody I care about, go have fun. So you do your thing. You do you. Getting back to consenting adults, same thing. Some people like hitting each other with paddles and electric kettle prods and things of that nature, and they enjoy it. They get off on it, quite literally. That's not my thing.
Nor mine, but
I have friends that do. Okay, that you do you, neither me over here, that's fine. But that's okay. If it's consenting and someone wants to be someone's like pet slave or whatever and go yes master and be the gimp or whatever they may be, whatever. That's them. If they enjoy it for whatever the reason, then go for it. I mean, life's got so many problems. If you can find something in life to be happy about, do it. That's what it is. There you go.
I have to say, because this is something that occurred to me a while back, just with the idea of consent culture, and particularly with triggers, and this triggers me, and some people take it too far. There's no denying that, but there's also the reality of someone who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder is going to be triggered by talk about certain subjects and certain actions, and people are like, oh, they should just suck it up and deal with it. And the thing that occurs to me is, if you look at it, there are things that I'm into that other people, other relatively ordinary people, and I'm not even just talking sexually, find completely bizarre and creepy. Lots of people find even people who believe, Christians and people who believe in demons, find the idea, I want to go poke them with a stick, insane, and why the heck are you doing this? But at the same time, there are things that I find extremely weird, bizarre, and why the heck would you do that are other people's normal.
And that's okay, but you don't sit there and make groups implicitly to kill these people.
Exactly.
You can sit there.
I just don't go do it. I let them do their thing.
In the end, normal is defined by what you see every day. In Aztec times, it was normal to throw babies off of pyramids because that's what society did. We look at it and go, "Are you crazy?" But normal is what you see every day. We define, and normal keeps changing. What was normal during the 70s or the 50s or the 30s is different than what it is now. And
it's going to be very different than what it is 100 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, we're all running around with supercomputers in our pockets to look at cats. That's where it's to go. And the availability of information is its own overload at this point. Now, that's a bad thing, but in the sense of, because we all have to become our own vetters of information, which is unfortunate, because there's too many people that want to prey on the stupid, or prey on the people that don't want to look into that closely. And that's its own set of problems, is that there should be laws in place that, look, this was vetted, this stuff was unvetted, so you take your pick on it, whether or not you believe in it or not, that kind of thing. And
The
that's
problem is,
there should be stuff like that
Yeah.
that's in place so that people don't just go, well, yeah, there's that pizza, pedophile ring in that basement of the pizza joint, and they go there and they shot the place. There was no basement to begin with, let alone the pedophile ring, but some idiot believed it, and well, I got to do something about it because no one else will, and he killed people over political BS.
which is where the problem lies. I mean, you look at a lot of conspiracy theorists. Actually, a really good example of this to tie people that were involved today together is something that our very first guest was talking about, Virgo. So you have this movement. For those who are tuning in who don't know, and for Arthur, since you don't know, so the sovereign citizen movement is this idea that basically there's the main way that it tends to manifest is this idea that there's traveling and then there's driving. If I'm driving my car, if I'm behind the wheel of my car for a business reason, like if I'm an Uber driver, a taxi driver, a delivery driver, a cop, driving. If I'm going to the grocery store to pick up groceries, then I'm traveling. Since I'm traveling, not driving, I don't need a driver's license because I'm not driving. I'm traveling. I don't need insurance because I'm not driving. I don't need registration. I can ignore the speed limit. And you get a lot of people that get into this idea and some of the weirder and crazier ways that it manifests who are relatively harmless. A lot of the times you can watch videos here on YouTube. Teresa, who's still in the chat, thank you for staying with us, knows a lot of the video channels that talk about this. A lot of them are relatively harmless. They're just people that are dead. It's like, oh crap, I lost my license. I need to get to work. Oh wait, I'm traveling, not driving. So I can drive my car and not go to jail for driving with a suspended license. I'm not saying that's a good thing to do, but I can at least understand the mindset. On the other hand, when you look at the people that are running it, the two big camps are one, a group that's historically and now white supremacists, and on the other side you have a group that are black supremacists.
Mm-hmm.
And the strong implication is they're trying to steer things towards a race war. Because they want to eliminate the other side. They want the purity of their own people. And that's a problem.
Or then it kind of goes, well, look, we were right. Hey, join the white side, or hey, join the black side, or whatever. It benefits them.
There's that. There's also eliminate the other side so that they're no longer interbreeding with our women.
They're one that's not going to happen. It's not impossible. It's impossible to happen. If you look globally, the United States used to be the big melting pot. That's not.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the only melting pot anymore. Europe, because of all the refugees and stuff like that, are also becoming a melting pot. So when you think about Germany or Spain or England or anything else like that, you have a lot of people coming from the Middle East bringing their own culture in. The bigger problem is that when you have immigrants in the United States, they want to become Americans and join in the melting pot. In Europe, they are having, because their culture isn't really set that way, they have a hard time bringing them into their culture. So the French have a hard time bringing immigrants into their own culture. So they purposely isolate them, and so the way they treat people is different in the Middle East than the way they do in Western countries, and that causes those kind of wars. But the race wars wants to see the same kind of thing, where it's like we can isolate them off and eliminate them. But that ship has sailed here like several hundred years ago. You're not going to do that in the United States anymore. It's not a possibility.
You know that, and I know that. The problem is there are people that have money that are convinced they can pull. The KKK is still a real thing. They still have sway in parts of the South. They've still been elected to public office, even in the 21st century.
I mean, look, you're going to get different people, and because there's enough of concentrated of the same idea. Like attracts like.
True.
You're going to have that kind of thing.
I absolutely agree that they're never. That ship has sailed over the horizon and then been sunk. It's never going to happen that they could. Well, for one, race is not a real thing. It's a social construct. Genetically, biologically, it doesn't mean anything. We're humans. That is the race in question. But there is this reality that some of the people who believe these ideologies have committed acts of terrorism. Cops have been killed. For that matter, less so Timothy McVeigh, but Terry Nichols, one of the people that helped plan the Oklahoma City bombing, was an ardent believer in the sovereign citizen movement. And he wrote about it in his manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this idea that, yeah, the ideas are silly. Yeah, there is no separating the purity of the races. I mean, anyone who thinks there can should just watch, Maury or any of the other TV shows where they do DNA genealogy testing on white supremacists and find out, yeah, guess what? Some of your ancestors came from Africa.
Right.
But there are still people that are mentally unstable and violent enough that want to have this happen, that people need to be more aware of it, I think, than they are.
Well, the mentally unstable, I mean, that's true on both sides of the fence. I mean,
this is true.
Liars and stuff like that, and people need to recognize that and give them the proper help when the time comes. But it's sort of one of those. The problem is, you go on certain channels and they are constantly pushing like anger, they're pushing hate, and a normal person will listen to it and go, even if they agree with it, they go, well, I hate those people, rah rah rah, and that's kind of where it ends. People like the idiot who decides to kill people at the pizza joint, the unstable people. And the problem is you trigger them. When it was said that, yes, please inject yourself with Clorox,
people did it.
People did it. People started to call it the stakes. Like, should we really do this? And other people actually did it. Or the hydroxychloroquine stuff. Someone said, oh, look, I have as a pool mix. I'll drink that. One guy died and the lady ended up in the hospital. I mean, it's reckless. It's why you don't yell fire in. And I realize that, again, shows my point of view. But I mean, it's one of those. Look, science is what it is because it's what it is. You say 1 + 1 = 2. If you do all this crazy stuff, you end up with a wacky cell phone. And some of the stuff appears magical. When you think about entanglement and stuff like that, they're actually using entanglement for communications. And China has a working satellite with that one at this point.
That's awesome.
Now, I know they have it here. Then you think of like the quantum computers. They have them practicality. They have them functioning now. You're not going to play Doom on it. But if you set up the equation correctly, you can do certain chemical analysis and stuff like that would normally take hundreds of years in a matter of minutes because of the way it solves all of it at once. Stuff like that. So we're living in the future. I mean, remember Star Trek when, Next Gen, when you're sitting there with pads and typing on it? We have them now. They were all fake back then. We have them now. I mean,
I have one sitting in my room, for God's sakes.
Yeah, so I mean, we're living in the future. Let's enjoy the future. All right?
I agree.
Should not be pick your favorite dystopia. That's not what it should be. I mean, yes, I would like to see magic become more mainstream. But the flip side is, with all those idiots out there, I'm not sure if I want it to be. There's a reason why I haven't published or written books, is because I know what I'm capable of doing, what my students are capable of doing. I've seen them do it. I don't want the masses to have that because the masses are idiots, as a general rule. As I said, Men in Black, people are intelligent and whatever, but the mob is like emotional and stupid, and and react. And that's what it comes down to, is that people react, and unless there's someone to tell them that, no, you're not quite understanding what you're talking about with any type of authority, it's a problem. I mean, that's, the earth is flat. It's like, no, it's not. Or, we have all the stuff to prove that the fact that it's not flat. I mean, come on. But
there's simple experiments you can do yourself to prove it's not flat.
Right.
Go to the beach, watch a ship sail over the horizon. It's how the Greeks and the Egyptians figured out the earth was round.
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea that at a certain point, how do you really know what is going on beyond your town if you never left it? Does it actually exist, or was it made up? And the answer is, well, hop in your car and travel. If that's what you really need proven to yourself, hop in the car, get on an airplane, go somewhere. You know? Get ideas that are not just in your bubble. Whether you agree with them or not, at least you heard them.
Yeah.
You know? Go by what facts there are. But the problem is, as you said, people don't want to put that kind of effort in. It's more easy to scream at the wind than it is to actually put the effort in to see what their beliefs are true or not.
People also don't want to challenge what they think is true.
That's another big thing. And that's why, as a magician, I run into a lot of problems when I run into other magicians. Meaning, if you have a theurgic magician,
Mhm.
all right, their magic is by definition, very intertwined with their beliefs in how their pantheon works, how the universe works, etc. And if you disagree with that, then you are wrong from their perspective. You know, it's kind of like a very religious person who says, well, you know, I believe in this deity or whatever, pick one. And therefore, they won't necessarily be violent about it, but I think you're just like, well, that's nice that, you're wrong. Science just goes, no, it's valid until you prove it differently. You can never prove something, but you can prove something false. Because it could be, I think it was, what was it, Flustrum or whatever the hell it was back in the 1920s, 1910s, something like that, because they didn't understand.
19th century, and then into the early 20th century as well.
Yeah. And they didn't really understand why combustion worked. And so they thought it was all this, like, interacting with the ethereal and all the rest of the stuff, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't actually come up with a series of rules. The problem was the concept of combustion as a chemical process also came up with a series of rules. But eventually it worked until the Flostrum concept failed. But the combustion, meaning chemical combustion, still kept going and still gave predictive results. So, well, that science died, and that's okay. But that means it went so far before it did, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You can never prove something. You can keep on going, and that's the running theory until something disproves it. But if something is proven, then that's it. Unless you can come up with a reason why maybe that experiment wasn't valid or something.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, doesn't really the experiment.
Which is a huge thing people don't understand about science as well, is that science isn't in theory at least angry when you prove it wrong.
Right.
Science, if you want to become a famous scientist, prove everybody's wrong.
Yeah, science generally is happy when you prove it wrong. Okay, all right. For the old boys network kind of perception, it's not. That's the reality. There was a story about a guy was talking about. They came up with an equation about if you threw a brick, he got the equation of that technically the brick is moving as a wave,
Mm-hmm.
as well as a particle, because they were trying to explain photons and such. And no one in the scientific community would take this guy seriously until Einstein heard the theory and went, "Yeah, that's probably right." And everyone went, "Yeah, no, that's right. It's right now." The problem is, unfortunately, you do still get the old boys network kind of situation going on. And
This is true.
And you do get, and it is unfortunate, but we are all still human. There, we have a tribal tendencies as part of our genetics.
There is another side to that, which is if the evidence really bears you out, eventually the old boys network will come around. Perfect example of that was early 20th century. The dominant theory in physics is what they called the steady state model. The universe simply is. It had no beginning. It has no end. It just exists. And this goes all the way back to Aristotle.
Right.
And Einstein liked it. Hubble, Hoyle, all the great physicists of the early 20th century were fans of this idea. And then a guy by the name of Georges Lemaitre looked at relativity, looked at observations that were being made about the universe and went, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And he proposed this at the time, crazy and radical idea of what he called the hypothesis of the primal atom.
Mm-hmm.
That the entire universe at one point was compacted into a very minuscule dot, as it were, smaller than a period at the end of a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happened, and in a trillionth of a second, it rapidly expanded out into the universe as we know it. This idea was not well received at first. When he met with Einstein said your math is flawless, but your physics is abominable.
Mhm.
When Hoyle, who himself was a very good physicist, he was a very smart man, hated this theory, rejected it till he died in the 1990s, even though he was not a believer in God in any conventional sense of the word. And in fact, he hated it so much he gave it a nickname to make fun of it, because he basically said, Monsignor Lemaitre, because Lemaitre was in fact a Catholic priest as well as a Belgian physicist,
Mhm.
you're suggesting a big bang.
Right.
And now Big Bang is a norm in physics. But when he first suggested it, even Einstein, whose own theory of relativity works far better in a Big Bang model than it does in a steady state model, had to be dragged kicking and screaming into admitting he was wrong. But in the end, he said, "You know what? Rejecting the Big Bang early in my career was the single greatest mistake I ever made,
Mhm.
because the evidence bore out the hypothesis."
Like I said, I do hope that my own pursuit of science does bear fruit beyond just me and my students. I hope it obviously keeps going even after I kick the bucket, so to speak. But I do want it getting into. It's like anything else. If magic is only special when only a few people have it. If everybody has it, then it's just, well, I have a car, or I have a bicycle, or I have TV. Everybody has TV. Everybody has electricity, that kind of thing. Maybe not
So
planetary.
now everybody has a wand of fireballs.
Right. So it's no big deal. It's normal. It's no longer weird. It's the normal. You know what I mean? So it becomes a actual science, and therefore it's going to get the level of attention where, it'll be constantly improved. You'll have magic cars, not because it's AI, but because it's a different power source. Maybe you'll be able to fold space more easily with that. And so right now we don't have vehicles that could go to another planet in a period of time in the solar system. Which you imagine, okay, you're talking about warp fields. That sounds great. How do you warp space-time other than a large gravitational field? How do you play with the Higgs field so you create mass that will create the warping of space-time and not create a black hole out of it? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you talk about other universes and you think, scientifically pretty much sure that they're there. You have no idea how to get there. Well, if we're coming at from the opposite side and go, well, here's a way. Okay. Now you end up with like the whole plot of Doom, admittedly. But, there should be other ways of approaching it. I mean, it's not like anything else.
For the record, if you ever accidentally rip a hole to hell while trying to create a teleporter to Mars, I'm going to be very cross with you.
I'll be very excited, though.
I didn't say I wouldn't be. I'd be excited too, but I'm still going to be very cross with you.
Fair enough.
But good news, we can teleport to Mars. Bad news, Satan and his army is marching through the portal that we created. Oops.
Well, I mean, the concept of wormholes. I mean, mathematically they work.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see it in something like Interstellar and things of that nature. Well, that's the equivalent of space holding. I mean, that's what a wormhole is. You're taking 2 points in space and you're connecting it despite the distance. Well, that already works when we talk about entanglement. Entanglement used to be like a weird, wacky phenomenon. Now they can do it at will. They can entangle what the frick they want to. And
From what I know, and I'm not a quantum physicist, I still say it's a weird and wacky phenomenon. It's just one that we actually can control.
They called it like spooky action at a distance. He's not wrong. But it shows there's more going on in physical reality than what you see day to day. And like normal Newtonian level physics. And they're already using weird quantum effects in computers and things of that nature already.
Mm-hmm.
There's already issues with, that's why they can't go the megahertz that much further, because of quantum teleportation effects. So what do you mean teleportation? Yeah, the particle just skips past the barrier if you make it too small. That's a problem, But that means they're observing it. They understand it. They see the problem, and now they're trying to work around that problem. But it doesn't say it's not there. So in normal meat space, we're not usually talking about, teleporting things. But now it's a possibility. Or even worse, superposition.
Mm-hmm.
So for an experiment, it wasn't an optical illusion. They were actually able to do something more macroscopic and have it in 4 places simultaneously. There's a little glowing ball, but that's what it was. But that's the point. It wasn't
It's so huge that they did it.
Yeah. So it wasn't some particle that only some wacky sensor can see. You can see it with the naked eye. It was in 4 separate places at the same time. Because what they said is that usually in quantum physics, if a particle can go 4 different directions, it goes all 4 until it's observed. And so they were showing the superposition where, yes, visually, we're not talking about particles anymore, we're talking about macroscopic things, that's still true. Well, if you think about how magic works with like creating different events and stuff like that, that kind of goes along. We kind of amuse ourselves like, look, science is catching up with us. And that's arrogant, I know. But I mean, it's still that's why I still think there's going to be eventually a bridge science. Now, whether or not
you're right,
the way we think it does on a magical level, that's completely understandable. That maybe it doesn't, but there is something going on there. You're good.
No, I was just going to say, I will say this. It's no great secret to you, or probably to anybody else who's listened to either of us for any length of time. There's quite a bit that we don't agree with each other on. But this is one of the most fundamental reasons I respect what you do, even if I don't always agree with what you do, is you're not just going, like, case in point, you're not Doctor Strange living in mom's basement.
Right.
You're actually trying to test what you're saying you can do, what you're saying is possible. You're trying, you got a thermometer, you're actually trying to measure for temperature changes. Yeah, did you register Q? Did you create a fireball? No. Did you actually measure and create a measurable change? Yes. And that's not as exciting to some people, but as a lifelong science nerd, I think that's incredibly cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can get the details about the experiment if you really want me to, or multiple experiments we did, actually. But to me, it's important that it's real, not that I think it's real. That's why, with my students, I'll use them as observers, or we'll be observers for what they're doing, that kind of thing. It's too easy to buy your own bullshit.
Yeah.
That's why I always like new blood in an organization, because here are people that don't know any better, and they get similar results without us telling them what the results should be. It reinforces that, yeah, we're on the right track with this. So the earlier stuff, we've had hundreds of people go through, we're not that worried about the higher end stuff. It's new stuff. We play with it, we retro it down, see if it works with new people, and then we go from there.
It's also true of me with doing, on a less, for lack of a better word, don't take offense to this, I just can't think of a better way of putting it. On a less grandiose scale, it's kind of what I try to do with investigation. I don't want to go chase ghosts on my own. I want to bring somebody else with me, because if I see, my experiences, my impressions are definitely influenced by my own preconceived notions and my own bullshit. I'll be blunt. And you need that extra perspective to look at it and give you a different opinion. It's also why historically I've worked with a lot of pagans and other non-Christians, because it's like, I see everything one very specific way. I am aware of this. It's good to have somebody else who sees it differently give their opinion.
No, I mean, that's good. I mean, at least in my organization, it's a matter of we make our differences our strengths, if you will. We don't want clones of me just because I founded the order. We want people who think for themselves and come up with their own stuff, but then we share a set of facts, if you know what I mean. And we do experiments. So if someone claims, oh, I did X, Y, Z, it's like, okay, fine, prove it. Let's go. We have the tools, you have the tools, we can go back and we can take a look, we can take the spell, we can do everything else with it. And if it's repeatable, it's like, well, congratulations, it's new goodie. Otherwise, it's sort of like, we don't accept bravado.
Oh, and one of our other guests is going to join us in a moment.
Fair enough. I will have to say at a certain point, I'm going to have to go for dinner.
By all means, I need to eat sooner or later myself. by all means, this is a very, as you can probably tell by now, this is a much more informal situation. So you got to go. You're welcome to go. You're welcome to stay. If we're still welcome, going when you come back, which is probably unlikely, but who the heck knows? You're welcome to come back.
Well, I appreciate that, but I didn't want to be rude about it. Sort of like, well, if people are showing up, I don't want to.
Yeah. But it's good. Let me just double check. Virgo, if you look in your email, there should be a link to the new one. If it's not, if you're having a problem, just let me know in chat or by email, and I'll send you the new one. Yeah, I'll resend it. Let's see. Dang it. I may vanish and come back.
You've had it.
And yes, it's magic.
Yeah. The magic of the button push.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes.
And Virgo, I just resent you the link in email, so you should have it momentarily. For that matter, if we want to, or I could have done that without having to vanish and reappear. Oh well, it doesn't matter.
Here I am.
Hi, Virgo Triad. Meet my friend Arthur Moyer. Arthur, meet my good friend Virgo Triad.
Hello.
Hi, Arthur. How are you?
Okay, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
And this is
So
definitely
what are we talking about?
Matt. At the moment, we've been talking about magic. We started about politics,
Indirectly, yes.
And human rights, and now, and we talked a little bit about sovereigns. And Arthur is actually the token magician, as you yourself have put it, Arthur, of my friend circle, as it were. So
yes.
We've been logically following that in quantum theory and how quantum theory potentially relates to magical practice.
Or will eventually lead to a bridge science, at the very least.
There for a moment, we had two conversations going at once. I don't know what happened.
I do apologize about that.
It was like it was playing over again what we had said, but it stopped.
That's good, at least.
Yes. So I'm sorry that I'm late. I've missed part of the conversation. It sounds like you guys have been having lots of fun.
Indeed. This is much more casual, so don't worry about late or people popping in. I'm actually overjoyed to see somebody other than Arthur join me. No offense, Arthur. It's just nice to have some variety.
Okay, stink, but we can't know each other.
Well, I probably won't be able to stay the full time, but I did want to make sure that I showed up because I promised you I would.
Well, you promised me you would try, so I especially appreciate that you actually did it, because if you hadn't been able to do it, I would have respected that as well. She said she'd try. If she can't, she can't.
Well, here I am. I tried.
Yes. So
hello to everybody in the chat, too. I want to make sure I say hello to everybody in the chat.
Yeah, Teresa Hall, Gulf City Pagan, stuck with us through the whole day, pretty much, actually.
She is a very loyal person.
Yes, and she says hello.
Hello, Teresa.
I am a very big fan of Teresa. She's a very nice lady.
She is. She's been on my channel for a very long time at this point, and she is an amazing help to the Watchdog group. And I know she adores you because she tells me all the time how wonderful you are. So it's just one big love fest around here.
I hear I didn't think you did the orgies, Kevin.
Virgo, we're not supposed to talk about the orgies until later.
I see. Okay.
We don't want to offend Arthur's virgin ears.
Oh, yes. So virginal.
Oh, my goodness. You guys are funny. So tell me what you were talking about as far as the magic.
Oh, that's a long time thing.
Trying to think of a good... Oh, one I thought was interesting just talking about was quantum the whole idea of quantum entanglement.
Okay.
And
Good.
No, go ahead, Arthur. You could probably explain it better than I can.
If you want to see something more weird, look up the delayed quantum eraser experiment on YouTube. I mean, they actually have
Okay.
scientists actually looking into it, showing reverse causality.
Jeez
So you
Louise.
can change things like backward in time from it. It actually works. They again, like entanglement, they don't know why it works. That scientifically and the math says it should work, but and it does. It's but this is kind of like one of those mind-breaking things because it's not the normal. Normal is
Right.
causality versus reverse causality.
And let's face it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Virgo.
No, I was going to say, fortunately, in that type of scenario, I would be a good person to take a look at that because there is absolutely nothing normal about anything that I do on my channel.
That's for darn sure.
Fair enough. I don't know if you know my background, but I'm more of a I'm a thaumaturgic mage rather than a theurgic mage, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of approach it more from experimentation and, the results of that, and then tweaking it, trying to figure out how and why things work and that kind of thing. And so I try to keep the dogma down as much as possible from my own personal perspective of things, and that's worked out very well for the last 28 years. But I realize that that's why we're talking about science as far as quantum physics and things of that nature, showing how weird quantum physics get, and saying that there should eventually be a bridge science between the magical sciences and normal science, meaning mainstream science is called instead of normal.
Right.
And there should eventually be a bridge between them. So it's not going to be what you and I probably expect of it, but at a certain point, there's going to be something that is within the realms of instruments that's provable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, in the past, we've had that come together somewhat also with technology and science. And I mean, I'm just saying the aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I've run experiments myself, even with the scientific thermometer, and I've gotten reliable results. But it's down to 3 Fahrenheit. That's not very impressive to anybody. And so it's not running the way I think it's running, but at least it's showing something. What the actual experiment was showing was that the probe was heating at a constant rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to write a program that wasn't just looking at the absolute temperature, but that was looking at the delta of the temperature, meaning how quickly it was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would do different spell work on it, and you would see it heat faster. But then it would stay heating faster. And then we used a particular spell work that would remove energy, and it would drop only for that point, but then it would go up at that same rate again. And then we tried it again. Nothing happened because there wasn't the energy there to remove.
Uh-huh.
The fact that it showed the drop was the interesting part. One of the other interesting things that we did observe was, depending on who was observing the laptop, was how it affected the thermometer. So I was telling Kevin about this earlier, was that some of the experiments we did was we had these pool noodles, these beater sticks, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen them? And we found that, hey, if we normally, some student do something stupid and we beat on them because, whatever. It makes a loud noise when it actually hurt. And they were fun. Well, when they did that, it would spike. Now, mind you, the probe was sitting in a cooler, sealed shut, had packing foam in it to make sure that it wasn't getting, any external
outside, right?
Trying to isolate as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so we observed that, okay, they would hit each other and it would start to spike. It's like, okay, that's interesting. What happens if you go in the other room? Does it happen? And the answer was yes. So then my friend who's very into BDSM went, oh, okay, the path to creating physical results is torture or BDSM or whatever. I went, okay. So we brought in a different group of friends who were really into that, and they started to go at it in the kitchen. Nothing. No observable change or anything else like that. Then we put a different person there because I was observing it. And then there was a change. And what basically came down to is what we observed was how into what was going on was the observer. So since BDSM isn't my thing, it's sort of like, okay, well, it didn't do anything. But I was, you know how if people are being wacky, you get into it because you get even peripherally involved in the silliness.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is
So then wouldn't that tell us that it's running off of some form of physical energy or even mental energy?
It wouldn't prove any of that. All it showed was that the observer mattered. That whoever's running the experiment was actually the controlling result. Alex, I'll just put it somewhere where the cat won't get to it, please. My son brought me my dinner, and I told him, yeah.
I'm laughing because I'm sitting over here with 3 boxers watching me eat ice cream.
Yeah, well, my
Send
son
me some ice cream.
dinner, but sort of like I told him I was online, and it's sort of like, yeah. So in any case, so that was the interesting result. Now, it wasn't the result we wanted because we were really hoping that the different magical experiments we were doing would actually show, hey, we're doing something. But it really boiled down to it was observing the observer, not so much what else was happening.
Right.
But that's the point of experimentation. You think it's going to be one way, and the results show differently, but you still got a result.
Right. And how many times were you able to get that same result?
We did it about like 20, 30 times, and then we kind of gave up because it kept things together, gave us the same result. We were trying to find a way of, okay, the delta was changing around maybe 0.005 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way down to 1 or 2. And so we spiked it up to about 5, but we couldn't get it past that. So we were trying, we're mages. We want to do something a little cooler, like lighting a candle or whatever. You're not going to light a candle at that kind of rate.
Right.
Now, mind you, we have other more circumstantial effects, meaning luck control, you know how it goes, weather manipulation, that kind of thing. And that works perfectly fine. But if you want to show it to someone like, Kevin, you guys sit there and look, I have a candle, poof. That
I have your solution, Arthur.
Yes, I know. There's tricks magic for that kind
No,
of thing.
no, not
a bit later. I know that too.
Not tricks. What you need is Bat Guano. Bat Guano will get you the fireball. It's a Dungeons and Dragons joke.
Fair enough. You know, it's called me Bat.
That one went over my head.
Yeah.
In the game Dungeons and Dragons, to cast a fireball spell, you need Bat Guano.
I see. I need Rocky Road.
There you go.
That's my.
So yeah, so we've done those kind of experiments. We've done experiments with water. Basically, sometimes it's validating some preconceived notions and see how true they were and how much they weren't. And the whole idea was trying to do as much double blind in the experiments as possible. Because for us, that part matters. But I also know like some groups get so caught up in the scientific aspect of what they're doing that they never really advance very far.
Right.
We're more interested in, we want results, but we also like to know if we can't translate that into more commonly accepted physics if we can, or at least use techniques that commonly accepted physics uses to try to advance things.
Sounds fascinating.
Pardon me.
Arthur's a very interesting guy.
Oh, thank you.
You were going to say Virgo?
I'm trying to remember. I must be getting old. I'm trying to remember. There was something I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, Kevin, because, all of the technical difficulties that we ended up having during my hour, we didn't get the opportunity to kind of bring Paranormal Encyclopedia into things. So I wanted to ask you about this. And I think I've kind of tried to ask you this in the past. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get off of Arthur's subject.
No, it's quite all right.
No, it's fine. I'm getting my dinner.
I want to know what you think. We have such a large amount of people that are really, really angry right now.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Really, really angry. I mean, like, so much that you can feel it a good majority of the time, not just online, but in real life. You have, you kind of analyze things from a different standpoint. You analyze things so that you can share with your audience what you think might be going on from a spiritual standpoint. And I'd like to know what you think. in terms of not just the polarization, but the anger that is happening. I mean, extreme anger that seems to continue to be pumping up further and further without an end in sight. Eventually, things are going to bust. But I want to know what you think could potentially, from a spiritual standpoint, how do you view what's going on right now, not just in our nation, but across the world?
That's a really good question. And I want to think that's I'm thinking the brain is turning because I want to give you. You gave me an excellent question. I want to try to give you an excellent answer.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you'll rise to the occasion to do that. But take a moment if you need to, because I really would like to know.
But it is the sort of thing that deserves consideration. Okay, so there's two things I want to address here. And Arthur, I wouldn't be surprised if you have thoughts as well. So, but
no, I never have a thought, really.
Well, obviously, I mean specifically in relation to this. But one is that what I call demons, other people may call other things, are very predatory spirits. They feed on negative emotion. They feed on negative energy. Certainly, everything else aside, this is the equivalent of a all-you-can-eat buffet for negative spirits.
Yeah.
And certainly in relation to that, there's going to be a degree of a feedback loop of they're getting energy out of it, and they're going to keep encouraging it, and even expending some energy to keep it going.
Right.
Because it ultimately serves their purposes. The other thing I think you run into is there's this idea that people keep bringing up, and I actually just did a video on my channel a couple of weeks ago about the end of the world. And when is the end of the world at hand? You know, is the apocalypse about to happen? Now, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I don't think the end of the God's foot's about to drop and end everything. But I do think, just like you were saying, you have these political groups and these people that have money and power that are trying to push towards this race war. I think there's this idea. There are spirits, whether I would call them demons, other people might call them other things, that want to bring about the sense of destruction. That potentially want to bring about, to borrow an idea from one of my favorite writers, Jim Butcher, that apocalypse isn't just an event or a war. It's a state of mind. It's an ongoing goal that they're trying to bring about. And I think there's a distinct possibility that whether it will succeed or not, that somebody downstairs is seeing this as a long game to bring about mankind bringing about its own destruction.
Right, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
And I think there's also the possibility, you may disagree with this, I don't know, but I think there's also the possibility that there are people that are aware that that is exactly what needs to be projected in order to terrify those that strongly believe that.
I absolutely agree with you.
Well, two things. One, never underestimate the greed of people. I think one interesting things that people need to understand is it's not that power corrupts. Power attracts the corrupt. There's a difference. And so that's kind of how things are progressing all over the world and just in general. So you have that. So you have the corrupt in charge, and people blindly are putting them there. I mean, just in this country, I mean, all over the world, unfortunately.
Right, I agree.
It is historically far easier to bind a group together by a common hatred than by a common goal.
Yep.
And so people have figured that out, and we're in the day and age where it's so easy to communicate with everybody all at once in a very cheap manner.
Yeah.
The internet, right there. And we have all these hate sites and things of that nature. You can so easily put out false news that carries your agenda, and people swallow it lock, stock, and barrel.
Yep.
And so, from an in-system reason, I think it's more around people. From a external system, which is when we're talking about spirits and stuff like that, I think it's a matter of, if you go from the concept of people learning, people got complacent.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is there's a certain point of if life always was about the most fun and the most pleasant things, life wouldn't be life as we know it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so usually lessons are done through a more painful manner.
Mm-hmm.
The pain only comes from change. So if you look at even the current political system here, there are a lot of people who are into politics now that if the current situation was not true, would not have been in politics.
Yeah.
That's very true. Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things, think of the Me Too movement as a good example of this, that would not have happened, at least to the same degree as it has if we had a different person in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
It's a manifestation of a pushback.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying other things haven't happened in a negative way too, because they will has, but it's a matter of look at what happened in Wisconsin as another good example of this. Most of the polling places were closed.
Right.
People went out in droves, even though there was only a few polling places, waited in line, braved the whole virus thing so they could vote. And instead of the landslide that was expected in the one Supreme Court position going one way, it drastically went the other. They would go, what? They cheated as much as possible to get it to go, and they still failed. That would not have happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They would have gone back, whatever.
Right.
Now
I agree.
people are pissed. They are motivated. That would not have happened. So, as much as anything else, the things that are happening now was probably to get people out of their complacency. That people get involved and they should do something.
I think
or streaming on Facebook.
if I could make an observation,
Mhm.
I agree with you, Arthur. I don't think the two views are mutually exclusive. I've had a personal theory for some time that the apocalypse isn't that the apocalypse will happen is more or less set in stone. Eventually, we're going to tip too far over the edge, and it's gonna be nuclear war. We are going to destroy ourselves. But
One way or another.
Yeah, when it happens, and the circumstances through which it happens, I think is very much based on human choices and what humans decide to do. And I think to take what you're saying and put my own spin on it, as it were. If you ask the question, one of the great questions in philosophy for Christians is if God is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, why does He allow evil things to happen? And I think there's an argument to be made that why God tolerates this kind of thing is to shake people out of that complacency. Because out of evil, great good can come. The great example of this is no person in their right mind would ever argue that the Holocaust was a good thing. It was one of the most horrible acts in human history, and so it's indefensible. That said, if it wasn't for the Holocaust and if it wasn't for World War II, the United Nations might never have happened. We tried the United Nations after the end of World War I. We called it the League of Nations. It failed. The U.S. didn't get involved. It was a dismal failure. The UN. Now there are problems with the UN. It's like anything else humans have ever made. It's not all good. It's not all evil. It's a combination of factors. But all of the good things that have come out of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, UNESCO, getting money to children, starving children in need, protecting World Heritage Sites and things of that nature, things that we agree on are important, have been influenced because a bunch of people got together and said no and realized we can't sit on our ass anymore. Another example another example of the way that things have complicated consequences is Hitler was a monster. There's no arguing that. You know who else was a monster? Stalin. And it was Hitler, and it was Hitler turning on Stalin that turned Stalin from an enemy of the Allied powers, because originally he was one of the Axis, into one of the Allies. And without World War II, I have to wonder what would the Cold War have looked like if, even for that very brief period of time, Stalin hadn't found common ground with the Western powers.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a cause and reaction, and there's the majority of the time you are able to find something positive that comes out of great pain. Most of the time, if you look back in history, you will find that. You will find that in medical
Oh, absolutely.
journals. You'll find that just about everywhere. But at what point, when I think my issue is with what I was speaking about during my hour, at what point, when you've got literally that separating and polarizing and stopping any kind of political discourse at all will stop the coming together that you're speaking of in addition. And so at what point do you have to come together? At some point you have to come together to stop the possibility of the separation remaining, I guess is what my point is.
Well, the COVID might have been exactly that, and of course it got perverted.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I have
people that are convinced it's not real.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether you got this or not, Kevin, out of what I was attempting to say, but those people that are pushing that, the large group of people that are over those people that have been bamboozled into believing that, know that it is real.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, there's no question of that. They're pushing an agenda. They're not actually pushing what they believe. At least the ones on top.
Right, exactly. So again, that the polarization, that we're talking about the corona stuff. We're talking about the
well, you want another good example of this, and I think it's true of corona as well. But if you look at the anti-vax movement, now the vast majority of anti-vaxxers are scared parents.
Yes.
I have sympathy with that. There are people, there are parents whose kid has autism and they want to understand why, and they want something to blame. Their parents that are about to have a child that are concerned. They don't want to raise a kid who's going to be in diapers and unable to do basic math. And you tell them that the mercury in vaccines, even though there's virtually no mercury in vaccines at all anymore, causes it, or that the aluminum causes it, and you give
aluminum does not cause anything. So inert.
This is true.
Anti-vaxxers
don't understand this. But
the aluminum that's in the shots is not the same aluminum that's a heavy metal that we're talking about.
Same with, you're right, and for that matter, same with mercury. There's two types of mercury. There's ethyl and methyl mercury, and what's in the few vaccines that still has it is harmless.
Right.
Your body passes it out, and it's incapable of causing the damage they think it can cause.
I mean, you're coupling on top of what I was saying too, and I 100% the anti-vaxxers is part of that group, but the lack of confidence that these individuals have, they're all scared. The ones that get drawn into what we were talking about earlier, they're scared.
I know. And here's the thing.
It's a group of people that and that fear that has turned the vaxxers into anti-vaxxers is the same fear that has made these individuals feel that they can't trust anything. So
I agree.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's everywhere.
There's more to my point, though.
Yeah, no, go.
So here's what you find out. If you look at the average rank and file of most conspiracies are honest, in my experience, and I've talked to young earthers, I've talked to flat earthers, I've talked to anti-vaxxers, I've talked to people who believe in space lizards, the whole 9 yards. Most of them are scared. A lot of them are actually, people have this idea that, these people are stupid. They're often not. It's a problem of, you can be very intelligent, you can even be well educated, but if you don't understand how to use logical reasoning, you're gonna get lost. If you don't understand how to read a scientific study and why peer review is so important, you're gonna get lost. And that's why I think a lot of these people have these mistaken beliefs. Where this is coming from ultimately, though, if you look at the major players in the anti-vaccine movement, Alex Jones, Jenny McCarthy, Mike Adams, the health ranger who's behind this idiotic website called Natural News, David Icke, what's his name? The guy that we were going to do a video on, which still probably should, Kevin Trudeau, who's currently in prison.
Kevin Trudeau, yeah.
Yeah. If you look at every single one of the people I just named, they don't just say that vaccines don't work. They tell you something else they believe does.
Mm-hmm.
And what they all say works is usually natural supplements, homeopathic remedies, and other things of that nature. What people don't understand is that the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The alternative medicine industry, the people that make homeopathic remedies and things of that nature, are a multi-billion-dollar global. Both of them are global industries.
Yep.
They have, and here's the thing: they don't work. Homeopathy is water. There are natural supplements that work. I don't mean to shit on all of the supplements that are sold in the world, but there's a lot of supplements that are sold that are useless. To be blunt, and I may get flack for this, but the reality is, unless there's very specific things going on, buying vitamins is a recipe for expensive urine.
Yeah.
And the people who run these companies know this. They know that the best odds they have of continuing to make billions of dollars is to get people to stop trusting conventional medicine. Because if you don't trust medicine, where are you going to go?
Right. I mean, there are definitely things that work. For example, there's a very easy way to get rid of a UTI, a urinary tract infection. You absolutely, unless it's gone past a certain point, can use apple cider vinegar and it will work.
Yeah, I believe.
Now that, however, it has to be a certain type of apple cider vinegar, and you have to catch that urinary tract infection in time. If it gets too far out of hand, you're gonna need antibiotics.
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
no other way to deal with it. But going back
to is also excellent for urinary problems.
Doesn't cranberry juice or something like that do something?
No, cranberry juice largely is sugar at this point. It's very difficult to even find cranberry juice that's in
actually
its
cranberry
juice. And even if you do, that assists in clearing things out, but it generally doesn't actually deal with the infection. The idea of the apple cider vinegar is to raise the alkaline level in your urine to a point to where it will kill off the bacteria. But let me just make mention real quick, Kevin, of what you had said about being empathetic to those that actually fall for the scams that are, making them anti-vaxxers. I started my channel out of empathy for these people that either didn't have time because of their busy schedules, or they are genuinely intelligent people, at least averagely intelligent, but they simply, in order for you to debunk ice cream. In order for you to debunk a lot of the crap that is said about, for example, mortgages being fraud and all this other stuff that these SovCits claim, you have to have hours and hours of research into literally researching every paragraph of a security agreement of a mortgage. And they're all slightly different. People don't have that kind of time. They don't have time to do that. They've got kids, jobs, bills to pay. So some of it is the assumption that, and this is really sad, you've got the alternative media, they call it now, right? Yeah. But it still has the name media in it, doesn't it? And when we start talking about a bunch of individuals that have spread quote unquote fake news, which I hate that expression, we now are looking at everything. We're not just looking at mainstream news. We're looking at everything. And the truth is that the facts that are coming in that are actually not facts at all, largely are not mainstream news facts. They're largely alternative facts from the alternative media. So, I mean, my point was though that I agree with you. I have a lot of empathy for individuals that fall for this because of the fact that they don't trust. Again, it's the lack of trust factor that is creating a lot of this. And I get what you're saying. That's the whole point of any industry.
I know that you don't entirely trust the U.S. government. Neither do I, and I'm quite certain neither does Arthur.
No, I do not. But there are ways to debunk things that could potentially be conspiracy driven within the government. And I do not believe that there's a shadow cabal. I don't believe that there's a deep state. And if there is, they're working directly hand in hand with the puppets out front, and they're all aware of it. It's still something that is visibly, like, for example, just a quick example is these secret accounts that the sovereigns claim that everybody's got. Well, guess what, guys? There's a couple of different ways to debunk that. Number one, our budget. Our budget. I mean, most people, I guess, don't realize that the budget is transparent.
Yeah, because that's the budget office. You actually get a whole book speak.
Yes. So. And it's huge. It's gigantic. But
here's the other realistic part of that. Well, I can just interject real quick.
Sure.
Is that as far as conspiracies and deep state and stuff like that, you know how difficult it is to manage like 20 people, let alone 100 people?
Exactly.
Someone or someone doing whatever. Even the White House has constant leaks in it.
Right.
And they're not doing it to do anything for the Democrats. They're doing it to screw someone else who was also there. That's their motivation. So that's the wacky part. So I mean, just human nature says it's impossible.
So you can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
Right, exactly. And I mean, the other point that is really irritating too is neither side is clean. There just happens to be one more dangerous than the other currently, but that doesn't mean that either side is clean because we're dealing with people.
Yeah. Case in point. Here's a fun one I found out a while back. Lyndon LBJ, Lyndon V. Johnson, the man who passed the Civil Rights Act. By his own admission, when he was in Congress, he voted against every single civil rights law that came his way. But when he was president, he pulled every dirty, underhanded political trick in the book to get it passed. And he's a Democrat. And Republicans do shady things. Democrats do shady things. That's a whole other problem with the bipartisanship mentality.
That is why I'm for ranked choice voting.
For what was that?
Ranked choice voting. You know what that is?
No, I do not.
Well, the two-party system is completely this indomitable thing, and people recognize that at this point. But the reason why in Europe you don't have that kind of situation, you have all these different parties all doing their thing, is because you have ranked choice voting. It's not just Democrat or Republican. You go, I like this candidate, but I will pick this as my second, my third, my fourth. And so they add up all these second and thirds and fourths and stuff like that. So you could end up with a Republican president with a Democratic vice president, for example. You could end up with all of a sudden now a Green Party or a Libertarian in there because it's not one or the other anymore. So even if they didn't have enough votes to become president, they would have enough votes to become vice president because they were second choice for enough people.
Which could make the sort of changes we need to actually break the two-party model. If we had a popular vice president who was Green Party or Libertarian or some other party, it would change. I like that idea.
I do too. I actually thought about something like that not too long ago, because in the current climate that we are in right now, there's got to be a way to bring we the people will say back together again, and it just is not happening as the way things are going. I'm a staunch independent, and I always have been. I see the flaws in both and always have. But right now, we're not even dealing with a what you would call a normal uh, right and left side. We are dealing with in-house extremists.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. Even think about the what was it, the Lincoln Foundation, or what the hell they're doing? What the hell they were called?
The Lincoln Project.
Lincoln Project. That's what it is. Thank you. They're conservatives. They're GOPers who are railing against Trump.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And because it comes down to Trump is not a conservative. He's not a GOPer. He
No.
ran for president on the Democratic ticket like 4 or 5 times, long before he did this one, for example.
He's spent most
Right.
of his life as a card-carrying Democrat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And
It is
so he did it just for publicity reasons. We mean on one. You know, he wasn't really trying to get in there. He was just trying to promote like Trump steaks. You know,
I would say that the party that Trump belongs to is the opportunistic party.
it is. And that's what I was saying before, that it's not that power corrupts; it's power attracts the corrupt.
Not just the corrupt, but the corruptible.
Attracts the corrupt. What's that?
There are very large, powerful foundations that are backing him for their own opportunistic reasons.
Oh,
also.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking
And
about. Yep.
that, of course, happens on both sides.
It does.
But it's there are some dangerous ones going on right now. Scary. So yeah, I mean it's something has to break in terms of the way things work in this country in order to bring people back together again. Without political discourse, we are lost.
I agree. I mean, ironically, COVID could have been that thing, but they found a way to screw that up.
I hate to say it, COVID could still be that thing. It's gonna
Yeah,
have
a lot more
for it
people
to
die.
happen. It's gonna have to, yeah,
Yeah,
have to turn into a bigger
exactly the way I
disaster.
feel.
And
I mean,
unfortunately, it's going to happen because what happened with the Spanish flu way back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
the first wave wasn't that bad. The second one was about 2 or 3 times worse. That's where you got the
Yeah.
15 people
Yeah.
from.
And
And
that's
everyone's saying,
terrifying.
we're all in the first wave right now. We're not in the second wave. The second wave's going to be much, much worse.
You're right.
I think that if we could get back to some form of it's so important that we have as an independent sitting pretty much in the middle. It's so important to have those conversations, to have those disagreements with both sides of the spectrum here, because without that, there is no understanding. There's no consensus to come to. It's just, you're evil. No, you're evil. That's what it boils down to. And it's really severe right now.
Well, it's severe because each bubble isn't presenting the facts completely. Now, obviously, one's more guilty of that than the other right this second.
Right. Mhm.
But so it's a matter of what someone once said, you are entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
Exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
the problem, is the one side showing facts that just aren't true, alternative facts. And we can't sit there and say that all the things we see on the other side is 100% true. But if 1 or 2% is untrue and the other side is like 70% is untrue, I'm sorry, there's a discrepancy there.
Right.
Oh, it's the same thing. No, it's not really the same thing.
And it's not Republicans, and it's certainly not conservatives that are the issue. It's a particularly radicalized sect that it is. A lot of people voted for Trump. A lot of people are going to vote for Trump again.
Well, all right, it's the Trump party versus the conservative party.
Yeah.
Trump's not conservative. That's not what that is.
I will point out, I consider myself fiscally, I consider myself conservative. Socially, I tend to lean more what we call left, although some of the reasons I lean left are somewhat conservative, because the biggest reason I consider myself conservative is I'm a big fan of the government should keep its nose out of people's lives when it's practical to do so.
Well,
at times the government needs to stand
There's
in.
a
step
Reagan
in.
Republican, and then there's what there is now.
technically,
Reagan Republican from way back in the day, where fiscally and like that kind of stuff more conservative, but like social issues I'm more liberal. But by the same token, by today's standards, I mean, Reagan would probably be a liberal at this point by how much they've shifted in the last 40 plus years.
well, I hate to tell you both, but technically that makes you an independent in today's climate.
Well, notice I said I lean conservative. I didn't say I was Republican.
Right.
Oh, I mean, I'm definitely not hard one direction because of how screwed up the other side really is right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad to me for those that are not just the middle of the road Republican guys that are out there, guys and girls, I guess I should say. But I feel very badly for them because we have the opportunistic party that has done so much damage that even these very reasonable and maybe live and let live kind of guys, but just really would prefer to have smaller government and live their lives and have equal opportunity to be able to believe what they believe from a religious standpoint, etc., are going to be totally lost until there's somebody that can bring everybody back together. And I think the only way to do that is to have some form of equality within the government. Right now, there's not enough equality. There's too much loophole finding and alternative facts, as as you
Let's
said.
call them what they are, lies.
They're
That's
lies.
what an alternative fact is.
I mean, I try very hard. I have my subscribers, for example. I believe I have more conservatives than I do liberals. But either way, it does not matter to me which direction. I like the fact that they are both sides, but either way, I think the majority of them would agree that there's going to be a huge problem with bringing the Republican Party back to any kind of normalcy whatsoever. I mean, this is just...
I think you're right.
Well, here's the problem. The reason why Trump has such the approval rating within the GOP because everybody who couldn't stand Trump left. There was like time and time again you hear about this high-level GOP leaving because he can't deal with what the party's turned into, etc. So the problem is that what you have left is the Trump is God Emperor party.
Radical right.
And so so the people who are GOP who get, the senators and the congressmen go, we're not that type, but we have to kowtow to the radical right or else we won't get elected because they'll primary us. We're not worried about getting hit by the Democrats. We're worried about getting someone more radical in my state than myself.
Yeah.
And that should speak volumes.
Yeah. And
that should speak volumes. I mean, you're in public service for the purpose of servicing the public. So when you begin to think about your career, which you have to do, but when you overstep that into, I'm going to do this because I'm being forced to do this instead of whistleblowing this, now you are in an area where you don't need to call yourself a public servant any longer.
Well, and that's happened.
That's a lot of politicians.
Impeachment that happens, the 10,000 times that they kept overlooking every single thing that the president and his crony has done that would have taken down any one of them, any one of these scandals would have taken out a senator or a congressman or anybody else in Congress, just one of them. And he's done 10,000 of them and still nothing.
So you got to wonder what kind of power is behind that, huh?
Well, it's a matter of, you're talking about like in system or out of the system?
I'm talking about what kind of money, what kind of individuals are backing the corruption, and what is the agenda of those people outside of the system?
Well, it's a matter of, from that perspective, one, it's kind of well known that Trump's been money laundering for the Russians for decades. That's nothing new.
Yeah.
Between the, the Pentagon Papers, whatever the hell it was, not the Pentagon, but the Panama Papers, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's very easy to follow the money. It's one of the reasons why that big Supreme Court case is going on right now.
It is very easy to follow the money. I encourage everybody to please follow the money.
Oh God, yes.
I mean, it's also an older report that's true. But the point is that the problem with authoritarians is loyalty to them is more important than competency.
Mm-hmm.
So that attracts a bunch of opportunists that just say, yes, I'm loyal, yes, I'm loyal, yes, I'm loyal, and are perfectly happy doing the stupid. And that's exactly what we have. We have the stupid leading the more stupid. And they do it, they hire like oil executives to run the EPA and all the rest of that stuff. Anybody who's going to destroy the exact thing that was opposing them, that's who they hire.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it, I'm sure, I mean, this is somewhat conspiracy theory, but some of it I wouldn't be surprised is marching orders straight from Putin anyway. I mean, look at how often the Russian delegation was allowed unsupervised around Trump, not just in the Oval Office, but every time they're at one of the G7 summits or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why conspiracy theories are so popular.
Right.
Is because if you actually start to think it through, it becomes clear that somebody's financing. Trump is not running for office on his own, only on his own money. He couldn't afford it.
well, Manafort
People are financing this. People are backing this.
I mean, think about that. Manafort works for a presidential campaign for free. This is fact, people. This is not conspiracy. That's fact. Where the fuck did he get the money? And they trace it down. They've tracked it down to an oligarch that he owed money to.
Well, that's the problem. Is people get the first point that somebody has to be paying for all of this, and they don't trace it down. So if somebody is paying for it, and the person is obviously not public, and they're not standing out going, "Hi, my name is Putin. I am funding your president's re-election campaign." He's not doing that. He's not that stupid.
No, he's ex-KGB. He's very good at what he does.
Well, again, like we were talking about earlier, Kevin, the country must be separated, divided, and ultimately destroyed for whomsoever it is that chooses that they want this land. So we're still dealing in the same realm.
My point is that real groups that are documented to exist, Putin, for example, various other groups that are not all that secret. It's not hard to find out that Vladimir Putin exists.
Right.
Or a much simpler and ready explanation for what's going on, but people that don't want to do the research or don't trust the news for various reasons are going to, it's the Illuminati, it's the Freemasons,
it's the lizard people.
It's the what people?
The lizard people.
Yes, obviously.
Oh, God, yeah.
See, I miss when David Icke's idea was just silly and we could laugh at it.
Yeah.
Before he started telling people that Corona-19 was not real.
I miss when I thought that watching a YouTube video with a sovereign who was giving a cop a hard time was funny, and I thought that was all there was to it.
Yeah.
I miss that. Yeah, I mean, the truth is that, the reason why people believe what all of these different conspiracies are with regards to the lizard people and the Illuminati and all of that stuff is because that's what people like Putin want them to believe. So all of this propaganda and disinformation that's out there is a bunch of different individuals that are all working towards the same goal, whether or not they ultimately really like one another or not. They may be ultimately battling against one another when it's all over with. But if they are going to work together to get the United States to a point where it's on its knees so that it can easily be overrun, then working together would be the way to do it, because it takes a lot of power to divide people as far as they are right now.
Or it's something very simplistic. I mean, the reality is that the United States spends more on its military than the next, 18 countries all put together, including China. The amount of surefire power that the United States have is just outright scary. So no one wants to go to war with the United States directly. That's stupid. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
However, the United States has obviously many things that disrupt it. And if you can isolate the United States into becoming xenophobic, which Trump definitely is in that category with all the, build the wall kind of stuff, then the United States won't be as willing to intervene in other things. Look what happened with Ukraine as a good example of that. We have a treaty with Ukraine, and Ukraine has a treaty with Russia, for that matter, too, saying that Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons program if both countries agree to keep their borders sound. And then Putin went, well, guess what? Fuck you, I'm going to invade. Yay! And they seized Crimea, and they put little green men, as I have to say, on the eastern front of Ukraine. And as far as the Russia's concerned, it's still not Russia doing that.
Right.
Putin did not want, he didn't care who it was, did not want Hillary Clinton to win the election because Hillary was a hawk against Putin. And he's afraid that she was going to do enough of like Free America kind of radio stations and stuff like that to get an uprising over there.
Well, that would be a necessity because when you think about it, in order to bring especially the United States down, it has to implode within itself first, and it can't have any allies. So think about that strongly.
Yeah,
Think about, case in point, think about Rome.
Aren't NATO allies from the get-go?
People look at Rome. Look at, why did Rome fall? Did Rome fall because the Vandals and the Saxons and whatnot invaded it? No. Rome was in decline for centuries before a bunch of barbarians, to use the traditional terminology, from Europe showed up and sacked the city a couple of times over.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is it got too big. The bureaucracy could no longer control everything adequately. And it started to tear itself apart from inside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to take something as big and monolithic as the United States down, that's the way to do it. You got to do it the way that Rome fell. You need to.
Right.
It has to happen inside, not outside.
Right. And you can't have allies willing to pop in and assist. So if you separate your country from any possible allies, and not just separate them in a way that where you're removing treaties and this sort of thing, but I mean separate them as in pissing them off.
Yeah, ideological.
Okay. Literally turning on them, talking shit about their leaders, making crazy claims, this sort of thing, to where eventually there's enough of them that will just say, I don't think so. You're on your own, bud. And then you've got, at the same time, the internal imploding on itself through sowing polarization and division through disinformation and distrust, mistrust, however you want to call it. Then you've got a pretty close to a winning combination of how to at least cripple it badly enough to start finding loopholes in the law and overtaking sections of it that where you don't recognize that country any longer. And if it continues in decline due to something like, I don't know, a pandemic perhaps, to where it takes out enough people and it cripples the economy badly enough, then you've got a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're like I said, we're heading that direction full steam. I mean, it's very scary, and I've said that before. I will say, and again, I'm not trying to alienate people, but I don't mind a conservative president. That's not what we have.
Right.
I agree.
Bush, I like Bush Sr. actually. I didn't like Bush Jr., but that's okay.
Funny, I feel the same way.
So do I.
The way I view Bush Sr. versus Bush Jr. is like, okay, Bush Sr., he was head of CIA. He knew how governments ran.
He was a former vice president, for that matter.
Well, for that matter, too. But I mean, it's a matter of, this was a guy who has seen some shit, if you will.
Yeah.
Knew how, even if he was doing something underhanded, he knew, like, look, the United States does that. We pull shit, we overthrow governments, we do a lot of stuff that we shouldn't do, right? Bush Sr. got that, kept it under the rug. Bush Jr. went, la, 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 here's a squirrel, wee! It really wasn't, but he wasn't trying to be a dictator. He was just being kind of nutty.
Actually, I'd say even more, Junior's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. If you watch interviews that he's given, if you watch speeches that he's given since he was president, he's not a dumb guy. For that matter, for fuck's sakes, the man was a fighter pilot. Reserved, granted, but stupid people aren't allowed to fly fighters.
It's not a matter of stupid, it's how you apply it.
Well, here's the problem. I think in my opinion, here's the bigger problem that Bush had. It wasn't how smart he was or his ability to apply it. It's that he got manipulated.
Right.
he was he's a very intelligent man. I mean, heck, if you want the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest evidence that Bush is smarter than people give him credit for, he's spoken out against Trump.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of
You know,
if
yeah,
any conservative that their job was on the line has spoken out against Trump. When people leave office saying,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be trying for election again,
yeah.
they speak about against Trump. Look at what happened with Jeff Flake and that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
that's one of many examples, actually. Very few Republicans, Amash was the only one that I'm aware of that actually is in office and said, no, screw Trump. You know, this is a different danger.
Yeah.
This is exactly what the Electoral College was meant to fight against and
Mhm.
do it. I mean, people were crying for it. Dude, seriously, take all that, vote Romney in.
Yeah. Anybody.
Anybody will even take Romney, go for it. We're happy with that. Vote Romney in. We know what this guy is. And honestly, when Trump started in, I went, you know what? He's not Democratic. He's not Republican. If he plays this right, he might be the best president ever because he's not really allied to either one of them.
I tried the same thing. I tried the feeling. That exact feeling was the same thing I was trying to.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side is the country didn't know him any better. People who were around the New York area knew exactly what Trump was. That's fine. The rest of the country didn't. I get that. The question is the people who are for them now, even after everything that they've seen, that's what's scary. That honestly, if coronavirus didn't come around, there was a very good chance he would have won against Biden. Now with the gross mishandling of the virus, and we're not done yet.
Unfortunately.
The economy, the big thing was, we don't care how horrible a person he is, the economy's okay. Well, now the economy's not okay. All right? And he's not doing anything to fix it. He's only doing things to make it worse. The virus is only going to get worse. With all this, like, yeah, you should fight for your freedom. Someone actually finally explained what the hell is with his duality. He's a populist. Well, he was an anti-government populist. But now he is the government. So how do you keep a group of people that are anti-government if you are the government? Is you say something goes along the party lines, then you immediately reverse it. So you have being anti-government. So...
Well, and there's an absolute agenda behind that, I believe, too. It's important that that the continued confusion and keeping you off balance is maintained.
From what
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry. I interrupted. But from what I understand, a lot of people misinterpret the Hitler comparison. Meaning, it's not a matter of like, oh, well, now we finally gotten to that like ovarian window or whatever. Look, Trump is not Hitler. Plain and simple.
No way.
No. He's not. It comes down to that, in one sense or another, Hitler has some sort of ideology he was following. Fortunately for us, Trump doesn't, other than his own enrichment. All right?
Right.
Well, this would be a lot worse than it is.
Yeah.
Secondly, but from what I understand, during Hitler's administration, it was the same level of shit show that we're seeing now with Trump, because again, he was getting people in there that were loyal to him, not that they were competent.
Yeah, there's a definite reason to compare them, but it definitely is not. They're not any way the same, because the intelligence that was there was scary with Hitler.
Actually, I'm not saying that Trump is smarter than Hitler, but Hitler was not nearly as intelligent as people give him credit for.
Maybe not, but he was more intelligent from the standpoint of at least staying on an even keel in terms of his own ideology than Trump is.
He was absolutely dedicated to his own ideology.
He was dedicated to ideology. If Trump was like that, then he would be a hell of a lot more dangerous.
He would be very, very scary, yes.
Pence is dedicated, but Pence does not have the charisma to get away with it.
Thank God for that.
So if Trump is ever removed or whatever and Pence takes over, yeah, Pence has the intelligence and the underhand in this, but he doesn't have the charisma to motivate the masses like Trump does. Trump is a con man. He's been a con man all his life.
Yeah.
I mean, how the fuck do you lose $1 billion in 10
How do you consistently lose money for years running a casino?
Well, that's true. But
They exist to steal money from people. I mean, come on.
But here's the thing: if you lost $1 billion in 10 years, what is to say? I mean, the obvious answer is then it's likely that he's nowhere near as rich as everybody thinks he is. Which is, if you go by that, he's not a money launderer. That he's only up and up in all senses of the word. Put in that category. If you just simply extrapolate what he did during the 90s, which we do have documentation on, that he's probably dead broke and he owes money to the oligarchs, because the only people who will still give money are the Russians.
So again, that's my point of what kind of money has to be behind this in order to further the actual agenda of bringing the United States to its knees.
Right.
I know the pandemic assisted in a way that it should not have, or wasn't planned for, in terms of bringing the economy down and so on and so forth. But before that, the whole purpose was to inflate the economy, whether it be a false inflate or not, in an attempt to try to keep this party in office and pushing the misinformation. So when you stop and think about it, that's all I'm saying is think about the amount of money that has to be behind this in terms of the actual agenda. The agenda is to crush the nation.
So
there's no doubt about that. I mean,
actually, Virgo, I have a question for you.
What's that?
Although, go ahead, because I want to try and shift the topic a bit, because we've been very political for the last 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, this is important.
Politics.
We need to be talking about these things. Don't apologize.
I know a few people who live in Russia. I've been there. It does come down to they are simply used to. They know full well that the broadcast media is lying to them. They don't care. It's a normal thing. Just like the concept of privacy in the United States used to be a big thing. That's why we have so many laws against actual physical mail. And it doesn't apply to email and stuff like that because they never got translated up. And so people are more used to like what Google has and Microsoft now has with Windows 10, etc., knowing pretty much everything you do on your computer, because we're just used to, well, we get benefits out of it. We don't care. We gave up our privacy. You know, in Russia, they're used to that's the norm. You know, it's like, yeah, we know they're lying to us. We don't care.
Right.
You know, and that's what they're trying to make over here. You have to condition the population that, yeah, you don't have to believe any of the things that the media says one way or the other. The whole thing of like, you know, Watergate and, you know, investigative reporters and stuff like that. No, that's a thing of the past. It doesn't happen anymore. I mean, everything's all just pushing their own agenda, so you can't believe anything anybody says. At that point, you got 1984. You know?
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing was the biggest order of the party was to disbelieve what your eyes and ears are telling you. Only believe what the party says. And, you know, when you're talking about that side of the fence, they're there already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's miserable, the whole thing.
I have an unrelated but highly serious question for Virgo. I'd ask Arthur, but I know Arthur's answer to this.
Okay.
So, Virgo, I was just trying to think of it. This is what? Got to be at least our maybe fifth, even sixth time on air together.
Yeah, there's been several.
And we've always talked about this political and these conspiracies and things like that. I want to flip script a little and ask you about my neck of the woods. Have you ever had a paranormal experience?
Yes.
Would you like to share?
Okay. So I've actually had a couple, to be perfectly honest. One had to do with a very, very bad car accident that occurred in 2012. I should not even be here right now.
Oh, wow.
I was on my own. I was traveling to see someone, and I was having to drive about 1,800 miles to get there. And I was doing just fine. I was not tired. I was fully rested. I went in a direction that led me. It was going to cut off quite a few hundreds of miles, but it was going to put me in an area during dusk that was just straight country road. All that you saw on each side were basically fields of sheep and cow and stuff like that. Okay, cattle. Sheep and cow.
Been
Sheep
there,
and cow.
grew up
They
there.
were cartoon
Back.
cow.
So what ended up happening was that the signage on that road was to go approximately 65 miles an hour, and that is about what I was doing. Thank God I was not speeding. But unfortunately, they neglected to put up signs warning you that there's the potential of there being problems with the integrity of the fencing on the side
God.
that the Black Angus cattle were.
Oh God.
There were 2 cows that came out, one standing directly in the middle of the road, that during dusk, they're black. They're very difficult to see if you're coming up over a hill. And it took off. It was a brand new Traverse that I was driving, brand new, only had 18 miles on it when I started off on the trip. And it took off everything up to the windshield. Then the head of the cow went through the windshield.
Oh God.
I had to kick out the windshield. The car filled up with smoke because of what comes out of the airbags.
Yeah.
I had to kick out the windshield in order to get out of the vehicle. All of the electrical was gone because the actual front of the vehicle, where all of the electrical is, had gone across the street and into the field with the sheep. And I walked away from that accident. But when I was asked after the police and the ambulance and everything got there, I didn't have a scratch on me, not one scratch. When I was asked exactly what happened between the time that the cow went through the windshield and that I was standing on the side of the road, I couldn't tell them because I don't remember being there. After the vehicle hit the cow and the cow took off the front end and then went through the windshield, if you looked at the windshield that had been kicked out by me getting out, the cow's head went right through where I would have been sitting. And I don't recall anything other than the impact and then me being there in smoke and knowing I had to get out because I didn't know if it was fire or not. So I kicked out the windshield and got out, and I remember from that point forward, but it was like there was something in between that happened. Pulled me out somehow and then stuck me back in that seat. That's the only way I can describe it, because after looking at the accident, looking at the vehicle, looking at the poor animal, all of the police and the ambulance driver and the investigator that had finally gotten there looked at me and said, "I don't know how you're still here. And I absolutely don't know how you made it out of that vehicle without major damage, because the cow would have hit you." Well, I didn't have a scratch on me. Now, granted, the next day I felt like death warmed over. I was so sore. Yeah. But other than being sore, nothing. Not a scratch.
There's no other word for it. That's amazing.
It is. It is, and it freaks me out every time I think about it. It still chokes me up because I don't know how it happened. I don't know what happened, and I'm not, Kevin, probably by now, I'm not a big religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person. First of all, I'm Native American. So, it's not, I can't place it anywhere. I can't completely wrap my mind around it, because I can't just say, oh, well, it was God, or, oh, it was this, or, oh, it was, the spirits looking out for me, the ancestors, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it was, but I know there's no way I could have been in that vehicle when that cow's head went through the windshield and hit the back of the seat I was sitting in.
If I may, whether you want to say angels, gods, ancestors,
whatever,
totem animals, there's a billion names for it. I'll tell you from experience, there are spiritual beings that watch over us. I think it's because you had work left to do, and look at what you're doing right now to try, to go back to the political side of things, to try to help counter the misinformation and the lies.
Well, that's what I assume must be there. That's a natural assumption because I've also beat cancer 3 times.
I know,
So
I've heard about that.
there's got to be a reason why I'm still here. And the only thing that I can do with that is say, you've got to take what you've got, what you're best at,
Hmm.
which happens to be my pipes, my voice. You've got to take that and you've got to run with it because you're obviously here to make a change of some sort. And whether it only changes a couple of people's lives through not getting them scammed, or whether it is just the handout of, hey, this is what kindness looks like, that is a responsibility that I take very seriously.
That's a really good point. There's the story, I'm betting you're familiar with it, and most of the listeners probably are, of the man who comes across a little girl on the beach. It's just after a storm, and a lot of starfish have washed up on the beach. And the little girl's picking them up and tossing them back into the water. And the man looks at her and goes, "What's the point? You can't save them all. You can't make a difference to them all." And she goes, "No, I can't, but I can save that one."
Right. I have to look at it that way when I'm dealing with people on my channel because I'm so super invested, as I know you know,
I know.
that it could destroy major parts of my feelings if I wasn't able to view it in that manner. One is enough. Every time the next one is enough, because I get down at times. There are times, you can only take so much abuse and attacks and threats before you start to wonder, I must be doing the wrong thing. I must not be doing whatever I'm trying to do that's a positive thing, must not be right because I'm absorbing all of these threats and attacks. But the truth is, and if I look at it really in without putting a lot of emotion into it, if I look at it just as the more attacks I get, the more threats that I get, the more it should tell me that I'm doing it right.
Absolutely.
Well, as they say, no good thing is easy, or anything that's worth doing is hard, I should say.
Yeah. And usually the people that are hated the most are the people that are trying to do something right.
Right.
It's really sucky. It really sucks, but that is true.
There's a point in the Bible, not to get overly Christian on anyone, as you both know, that's not my big thing.
No,
but
that's okay.
about, if you want to go follow Jesus, you're going to be picking up your own cross. If you want to do the right thing, you're not going to get the world handed to you on a silver platter.
No, it's extremely difficult to try to ride that particular train. The train of truth and honesty is not a fun one. It may be the right one, but it's not a fun one.
Well, everybody, I mean, even with Kevin doing the paranormal encyclopedia and me doing Omni and you doing what you're doing, I mean, there are a lot of people that have dreams but don't have the motivation or the will to actually do anything with them. Or they hit their first obstacle and they stop.
Yeah.
And so the people who truly change the world are the ones that persist despite the obstacles that they find. When I started what I was doing, everybody said that, no, it can't work that way. Now all these years later, there are hundreds of people in multiple groups and stuff like that understand what my teachings have been. Or even my business that I'm working on right now, which, hopefully will come to fruition relatively soon.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, it's obvious that you both have a lot of drive. That's very clear just from speaking to you. I have to say, though, just to be fair and honest about it, that some of mine might just be stubbornness. The refusal to put it down when I've got people that are saying, I hear it all the time. You know what, Virgo, you can say whatever you want to. You can spread whatever facts you want to spread. You can disarm Harvey Dent and disarm April Lejeune. You can take this channel and that channel down, and you'll never stop this movement.
Hey, Arthur, am I stubborn?
Oh, God, yes.
I was being
To your own
facetious. I
detriment,
said that
Omar.
about the two of you, by the way.
Oh, I'll freely admit it.
It's very clear that we're all stubborn in that same
Yeah.
manner. But did you hear what I just told you? The comments that I get from these individuals. They know that I know what's up because
Yeah.
they make the comment constantly. You'll never stop this movement. Watch
Yeah.
me. Watch me stop it. Or watch me put so many roadblocks in it that you'll be calling me a bitch until the moment that you pass away.
Well,
Because it is something inside of me that is where whatever rebel that I have had my life has turned to. Whatever anger I had over having to battle cancer, whatever upset I had over losing my daughter, that's where it's going.
well, I also wanted to share because it's one of my favorite stories. Well, actually, there's a few examples I could share, but it's one of my favorite stories. Walt Disney, who built the Disney Empire, originally was working as a cartoonist for a newspaper. He was fired because they didn't think he was creative enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Stephen King, his first book, which is still one of his most successful, was the novel Carrie.
Mhm.
30 different publishers turned him down.
Yeah.
He gave up to the manuscript in the trash. The only reason it got anywhere is that his wife dug it out of the trash and convinced him to keep trying.
And I'm lucky that way too. I have a spouse that's amazing in supporting me and backing everything that I try to do and never pushes, but will subtly say, hey, don't you think maybe you might want to try to keep going with this? This is a pretty good thing,
Yeah.
You get on a weekly basis, you get people thanking you for helping them from staying out of trouble. You might want to think, because believe me, there have been times that I've said, hey, I'm done. I'm tired of getting attacked or whatever. But then ultimately, the minute that happens, I get one of those, you'll never stop this movement comments.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that really gets under my skin, and I keep going because of it.
Good. You should, honestly, it's kind of like you sort of should thank them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Particularly when someone pissed them off.
Well, I'm going to have to run, but I want to tell you once again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on your platform.
Always a pleasure to have you. You're always welcome here, Virgo.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And at some point, we need to have you on the Virgo Triad channel too.
Anytime, just let me know when.
I need you to do me a favor. I'm sorry to do this on camera, but I am putting you on the Watchdog page to promote your channel, and I need a bio from you.
I'll be happy to send you one. And wow, thank you. I'm touched.
Well, VirgoTriad.com is finally up. Did you know that?
I know. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. So I'm putting you on the Watchdog page, but I want to make sure that it's the bio that you want. So if you wouldn't mind sending me one, no hurry, just whenever you have the opportunity, that would be great. So I can get you up there and start promoting you through the website. And I'll extend the offer too, in terms of everybody else that is spreading, we'll say, real truth and facts that can be backed up. If you want a space I will be adding an actual page on my website that doesn't necessarily have to do with scam fighting or, debunking conspiracies or whatever. It can have to do with anything, so that there's an extra space for people that I meet across social media that are just putting up things that are real, because people know by now, after this length of time, that I won't support it unless it is a positive thing for the community, for YouTube and Facebook and, well, social media, basically. And I also want to say it was very nice to meet you, Arthur.
It's very nice meeting you too. Sorry we didn't get a chance to talk that much, but it was nice.
Well, what we did, I think, was pretty good. I think we got a lot of stuff. At least we know where each other stands politically.
Yeah. And we did almost 3 hours between the three of us. That's pretty impressive.
That is very impressive. Wow. So,
2 hours, 23 minutes altogether, the stream has been going.
My goodness. We did do it, didn't we?
Yep. And I think it's probably about time for me to call it a night as well.
Yeah.
I have to do magic at noon tomorrow.
Well, I'll be watching on and off as I can.
Mhm.
But thank you again so much. Thank you to everybody that is a subscriber of mine that came over. Please support Kevin on both this channel and Paranormal Encyclopedia, and Arthur and John, and I'm forgetting people.
Patrick Dacre.
Patrick, so that this way we all have the opportunity to share their content too. It doesn't always have to be about sob sits or ghosts for that matter.
Yeah, this is true.
All right, you guys, you have a wonderful evening.
You as well.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
You had something to say, Arthur?
No, I was just about to head on out too because it's getting pretty late. No, I mean I was working all day and sort of like so I made sure my alarm went off. It's like, all right, you got a half hour before make sure you at least go over it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be working tomorrow. I got a deadline on Monday that I gotta make. But
good luck with getting. I'm sure you will, but good luck regardless.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's a live stream. It's a self-imposed deadline, but I got 2 marketing things I got to review, and I got to do that tomorrow. And it's just like, it's kind of craziness. But I know my problems. Well, there you go.
Well, I also just need to get off my butt because I've been sitting in this chair for almost 9 hours straight.
That's why I need a nice chair. There you go.
Nice or not, 9 hours in the same chair, eventually you start to get sore.
True enough.
And I still have hours to go tomorrow. I want to thank you, Arthur, for joining us both for your presentation and for joining us for this. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting listening to the 3 of us go at it about politics.
That's fine. I'm happy to talk about like lots of stuff, not just politics. It's just not where it went.
Yeah, that was the idea, though. I mean, the whole idea of doing this was to just give the guests a chance to socialize with each other and see where it went. I would have liked to have seen some of the others make it, but people have lives. I totally understand that.
Yep. I got it. All right.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up because I want to go over the schedule for tomorrow with people, but that's going to do it for tonight. For you, Arthur, have a good night, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
You're like Virgo. You're always welcome with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, folks, that's going to wrap it up for our first night of the Wrath of Khan convention. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in throughout the day. I've had, I think the most people I've seen show up on the feed is listening at one time was 6. Although looking at other metrics on YouTube, I can see that we've had slightly more. Well, 20, almost 30 more at least. It's probably gone up since then. I want to talk real quick about the schedule coming up for tomorrow, and then I'm going to go lay down, relax, and get some food in me because I haven't eaten since this whole thing started. So once again, remember, because I don't want to say Eastern Standard Time every time after I finish describing events. All of these times are on Eastern Standard Time, which is my own time zone. But we're going to start tomorrow at 12 noon with me. I am going to be doing some magic tricks. For everybody, I really would like, if you're listening now or if you see this between now and noon tomorrow, try to tune in live. The tricks I've got in mind are audience participation types of tricks. They're not going to work real well if I'm the only person here. At 1 o'clock, we'll have our first guests of tomorrow on, which are my friends Lilith Laura and her husband Baron Mind. Lilith is a remarkable woman. She is a storyteller. She's a writer. Baron is also an excellent writer. They do fairy tale. She does her own take on fairy tales. I don't entirely know what she's got planned for tomorrow, but it should be very, very cool. At 2 o'clock tomorrow, Baron Voltage is going to be joining us to get into what drives fear and the horrors of the human mind, while pointing out where you can find these in literature, and what are other people may or may not join in on that. At 3 o'clock, we're going to have another YouTuber, another friend of mine, which will be Cirrus the Skeptic. He has his own channel, and it's worth checking out. He does a lot of things on religion and political issues and things like that. It's a very good channel. If you don't know Cirrus, I highly recommend checking out his stuff. He's a good guy. He's got a lot of good positions. At 4 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to have Brian McKinley, the other frequent co-host of my show, the godfather of vampire thrillers. He'll be giving his lecture on vampires. And if we're all very, very nice, maybe we can convince him to do a reading from one of his novels as well. At 5 o'clock, Brian, John French, Patrick Thomas, and myself, and Baron Voltage are all going to be joining forces to do a lecture on a panel on vampires, both in myths and in various forms of media. And then sadly, because all good things must come to an end, at 6 p.m. tomorrow, we will have our closing ceremonies. I'll be wrapping it up, doing the thank you to all the wonderful people who managed to get this thing to work and all the wonderful people who have joined us. And that'll be it. And the next week, we will go back to the regular radio show. But that's going to do it for tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us. As I've said, the two things I want to push again. Oh, three things. Two things I want to push. One thing I want to ask. So, one, if you have the spare funds, please consider donating to Save the Children. There are a lot of people in need right now. I am not asking for money for me. If you look in the description of the video, of all of the videos that are done today, there's a link to their website. Go find out what they're about. If you don't agree with Save the Children, I'm not judging. But if you have some money to spare, there are lots of charities in the world that could use some help. Try to give them a hand. The other thing, what was the other point? Oh, the other thing was that there's another virtual convention going on this weekend, which is COG Steampunk. They're also a great bunch of people. I think they may even still have things going tonight. Even if they don't, if you join us tonight, and for that matter, if you join us tomorrow, if you're watching this after the fact, you can look them up on YouTube. Once they have a link to it, I'll put it in the description of these videos. And you can watch their stuff, just like you'll be able to watch me and what I'm doing now and all the other people that were on today and tomorrow on this channel. So you have that option. Definitely check them out. They're a good bunch of people. There's some really good performers in there. People that I know personally, for that matter, from various conventions I've done. I highly recommend checking that out. The last thing I would ask is if you have enjoyed this, if you do like what I've done, please consider subscribing. You can subscribe here, although once the convention's over, there's not going to be new videos in the foreseeable future. I may revisit it at some point. I don't know. But you can subscribe here. You can go to my main channel, which is Paranormal Encyclopedia on YouTube. There's a link to that in the description as well. Subscribe. It won't cost you anything, and it definitely helps me out. Also, comments are always welcome. Both helpful. If you liked it, tell me you liked it. If you didn't like it, tell me you didn't. This is something I want to be an ongoing thing. I want to do another convention potentially next year. So if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to let me know. That's going to do it for tonight, folks. Thank you all so much for those of you who have stuck with us. And thank you to those people who have been in and out throughout the day. I love you all. Have a good night, and God bless, and I'll see you tomorrow.